Assalamu alaikum. We have a lovely revert from USA, from Texas, right? Rosy Amina on with us today. I'm really looking forward to this. Like I said, I'm so excited to ask you quite a few questions that I've got for you, but also just to get to know you a bit more, get to know your story. Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this as well.
Good. I'm glad. One of the first questions that I did want to ask you was, what was like the major event that made you convert to Islam or revert to Islam? What was the one thing? I mean, I'm sure there's many things, but what was the one thing that sticks out in your mind that you think that made me want to become a Muslim?
So for me, first of all, I didn't know anything about Islam, like at all. And then my friend told me that it was Ramadan, and I was like, what is that? And so I went and I looked it up, and I fell down this like rabbit hole, and I was just studying Islam, and I could not stop. Like I would go to sleep, study Islam, wake up, study Islam. In the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would still be studying Islam. Like I was just obsessed. And for me, so I lost my son 4 years ago.
Wow,
Um,
sorry.
and so the thing that like made me decide like this is it is I actually read a quote that talked about how kids who pass away actually like ask a lot, like I want her here in Jannah. So to me, like that just like I don't know. The next day I texted an imam at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I'm ready to take my shahada. And I drove like an hour and a half, and I went, took my shahada, and yeah, I it's been the best
Wow.
decision of my life.
That's there's quite a few things in that I want to ask you. I mean, first of all, I'm assuming that in Texas, Islam is a big thing. If you are there not many Muslims around there that you hadn't heard of it before, or you hadn't really known much about it?
So I'm fairly new to Texas. I moved here mm, like about a year ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm very new to being here. But the community where I live, I don't know many Muslims. I have like a couple of friends now. Um, but I know that like in Dallas and Houston, there's supposed to be like a big Muslim community. I haven't been there, so I don't actually know.
Wow. And I'm really sorry to hear you lost your son. That really touches me because I'm a mum, so that must have been one of the hardest things to go through. Was he really young? Was he?
Yeah, so he was 3 months, and he passed
Oh,
away from
wow.
SIDS, which is basically when they forget how to breathe while sleeping. For the people
Yep.
that
Yep.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That must have been really hard. I'm really sorry. And may Allah grant him the highest place in Jannah. May you be with him soon. And I'm sure he's with you always. But what a beautiful thing that, maybe he is the reason that you're now Muslim. And if that is the case, that is a beautiful blessing. And I'm so glad that you've come and you've chosen Islam. And I'm sure you're reaping the benefits of being a Muslim now. I'm sure
Yes,
you feel it as well. You must feel it in your soul.
definitely, definitely. And honestly, I think that once I converted to Islam was when I finally understood like my son's passing. Like I understood that there was like a whole like reason behind it. I may not know like the exact reason, but when he passed, I felt like I had like no purpose at all. And then once I converted to Islam, it was like I felt like I don't know, I've been feeling like such at peace, and it's been amazing.
Wow. How long have you been a Muslim? Just this Ramadan that passed?
Yeah, it's gonna be 2 months tomorrow.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And are you finding it like, what do you love about it? What do you struggle about it? Well, first of all, what do you love about Islam?
I think my favorite thing about Islam, which is something that like I hear so many people like, no, 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 it's how women are treated. Because like for me, I always used to get like catcalled and stuff like that. And once I converted to Islam, that like stopped. I feel so respected. I feel so like, I don't know, valued. And I honestly love it. And all the things that the Quran says about like women and everything, to me, it's like, wow.
Yeah, and I feel like when you go out and you're covered, men just don't look at you. They don't, and now it's been where we are right now, it's been really warm, and we've been walking like around in the streets, and I see women with nothing on, and I see women, because it's quite a Muslim-filled city, this. So there's a lot of Muslims as well, and there's Muslims walking around in a niqab, there's Muslim walking around in just hijab or fully dressed, and then there's women walking around in like a bikini, and you just think like, you yourself think, wow, you really don't know what's going on in your mind. You don't know the peace and the protection that you feel if you covered up. Like, you actually, and it's sad to me. I feel sad that these women, maybe they don't feel like they need to dress like that, but that is like the culture, right? It's just the culture of how women are meant to be.
Yeah. And the way that I've looked at it, because before I was not the type of person to cover up or anything like that. But now the way that I see it is, you always want to protect what's valuable to you. So like, for example, with your phone, you always have like a case on it because you don't want it to break. It's something valuable to you. Same thing with computers, same thing with your car. You want to protect your car. So like, let's say it's raining. A lot of people cover their car. So it doesn't get water on there or whatever. There's a lot of things, but I definitely feel that, once you're covered up, I don't know, it's like you hold more value.
How did you feel when you first put the hijab on? I watched the video where you said that you never wore a hoodie, you always had your hair out, you never like covered your hair, and then all of a sudden it was like you'd covered it. So it must have been quite a big change.
Yeah, so I don't know, my hair, I feel like it's one of the qualities that I love the most about myself. I love my hair. I take care of my hair, although I dye it all the time, but I don't do that anymore. That has stopped. But I have always my hair has always been out. And then when my friend told me about Ramadan and all this, and I started looking into everything, I got a scarf. It was just like a regular scarf. It wasn't even like this. It was like one of those scarves that are all the way connected, like a circle scarf. And I put it on, and I'm like kind of trying it to see how I look in it. And I send my friend a picture, but mind you, I'm like wearing spaghetti strap and shorts. Oh. And my friend's like it looks good, but you kind of need to cover up.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh. So I immediately covered up, and I was like, how's this? And my friend was like, that's perfect. And I didn't I felt like I couldn't wear anything else anymore. And I hadn't even converted yet.
Wow.
And I was already, before I even converted, I was already wearing my hijab.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is a beautiful thing. And you suit it, mashallah. You look beautiful in it. I always find that women actually look at themselves and they're like, I actually look more beautiful with my hair covered.
I love it. Yes, I love it. Have not gone back to, even with my family, when I go to my sister's house, I'll still wear it. She's like, are you can we see your hair? I'm like, yeah, but I just I just love wearing it. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. So you mentioned your sister. Have you got many siblings?
So I have one sister that's from both my parents, and then I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters that are from my dad's side.
Wow, mashallah, big family then. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was it like? So you didn't grow up in Texas then? You said your dad's recent. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up until I was about 7 years old. I was in Dominican Republic, which is where I was born. And then we came to the United States, and I actually lived in Connecticut for about 15 years.
Right. Wow.
So yeah.
What was it like growing up in the Dominican Republic? I understand your family were Seventh-day Adventists, so that must have been a lot different to where you are now. What was that like?
Yeah, so with my family, mind you, my family is a very religious Hispanic family. So my parents, my dad was the first elder. In any church that we would ever go to, he was the first elder. So we had to always be the example for the church. And my mom was she was a teacher. So it was always we had to be the perfect family, basically. And I even when I was 4 years old, I used to love like preaching. I used to go with my dad, do Bible studies, and I would be singing in church. My mom loves to brag about the fact that I used to sing before I could even talk. And so I used to go to churches and just sing. But one thing was that my dad, he didn't like us to go to another church. So like I wasn't able to explore any other religion. And if I got invited to a church, I would go, sing, and then I would leave. And my dad like only wanted us to go to like the church where he attended, where he was like the first elder. And even if they were like Adventist church, he would be like, like we would have to go with him, you know? So it was tough because I couldn't really explore anything else. And that was all that I knew and all that I was taught. But I mean, it got me here somehow. So
I know it's mad. You're not the first person that I've heard that's grown up in a faith-based house that's quite a strong faith, and then become Muslim. And I naively I thought that a lot of reverts or converts came from like a no faith-based house, and they just started looking for faith and they liked this one. It's quite, because that's quite a big change to have to actually go, I reject this faith that I've grown up with. It's like me saying, you know, astaghfirullah, but me saying, I don't want to be a Muslim, I want to be a Christian. I would be like, I just don't, you know, this is all I know. So it's a massive thing to grow up. And especially when you say your dad was an elder and he was really respected in the church. So that must have been quite a big change for them as well, like for your family.
Yeah, it definitely was. Especially like, so before I converted, I took all of my pictures down from social media. I deleted everything. And I actually put up a picture that says, like, under maintenance, we'll be back soon. And so then like 2 days after I converted, I posted a picture of me wearing a hijab. And I was like, okay, guys, don't freak out. And everybody just was freaking out. Everybody started calling my parents. Everybody started calling my sister. Like, what's wrong with her? Is she okay? Like, what's happening? And like pastors were calling my dad. It was crazy. It was a big change. And that's actually kind of like how this whole like YouTube thing started as well. Because I was never planning to like make a YouTube or anything, but my dad, I think he thought that YouTube was smaller than Facebook. Right. And so just because everybody was reaching out to them. So my dad was like, you know, instead of like posting on Facebook, why don't you just like post it like on YouTube or something? And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, it's not like it's going to go anywhere. Like nobody's going to see it. And then like overnight it was like, and now my dad's like, maybe you just shouldn't post online. I'm like, But yeah, it's been quite a journey for sure.
Well, I understand from your video that your mom was, you know, alhamdulillah, she was okay with it. She was like, you're an adult, you've made your decision, and she was quite supportive. But from what you're saying, your dad maybe didn't jump on as quickly.
Yeah, my dad is definitely, he's a character for sure. But so my dad, he's like supportive, but he's like hesitant because all that my dad knows about Islam is what he sees in the news.
Yeah.
And as we all know, like the news has just a way of portraying Islam in a negative way.
Yeah.
And that's not it. But it's been a little tough kind of like explaining to him like, okay, no, what you're seeing on the news, that's not Islam. Yeah. And sometimes like he'll like just argue, like he'll just want to argue out of nowhere. Like this one day I was like talking with my mom. I was reading over these questions that I made because I made like this thing of like 22 pages of questions for like a future husband because I found out that there's like no dating in Islam. So I was like, I need to know all of this. So I'm like reviewing all of these questions with my mom, asking her like, should I add anything else? And my dad out of nowhere just pops up and says, I just don't understand how you don't believe that Jesus is God. I'm like, who was talking about that? And so then we started like this little argument. And then out of nowhere, he just gets up and he's like, you know what? I don't know anything about Islam, but I'm very happy with the decisions that you've been making towards your health and the way that you're living your life now. So as long as you love God, I support him. And then he like walked away and I'm like, what just happened? And my mom's like, huh? I was like, all right. But
Because you think for like a dad, he would be like, oh my God, my daughter's covered up. She's not going to be dating anymore, or, whatever. Like, but Islam is like, for a dad, I would think it would be like, oh my God, great. My daughter's protected.
yeah, so for my parents, so before I became a Muslim, it was like I was not living a good life at all, because of the loss of my son and other like stuff that I had been through. um I took like a very dark turn in my life. And so my parents, the day that I actually decided to tell my mom was the day that my parents started fasting and praying specifically for me. So
Wow.
when I actually told her, she was like, this is God. Like, we literally just started praying. This is God.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's amazing. How did your siblings react? Are
Um,
they, are they all still Seventh-day Adventists? Did everybody still quite
so
strong in their faith?
the main person that like is really like involved in my life, I would say, is just my sister. That's from both my parents. Everybody else is kind of older. They live elsewhere. Like I have a brother who lives in Spain. Most of them live in Dominican Republic or in Canada. None of them like live here in the United States. My brother from Spain, though, he actually came and visited us. He's the one that, like, the brother that I probably talk to the most. But he's like, I support you, but then we have like arguments about like different things, about our beliefs. With my sister, at first it was kind of like she was like, it's whatever. And then now, like, she's pregnant, so
Wow.
all her hormones are like everywhere.
Yeah,
So she just like sometimes she just wants to pick a fight.
of
And like,
course.
our relationship has gotten like a little rocky because she has like this thing where she says things without thinking about them first. And so it's been a little rocky, but now I'm like, you know what? Let's just not talk about religion because I
Yeah.
don't want it to like damage our relationship. So,
That must be quite hard, isn't it? Always feeling like you have to defend your faith, and especially in the argument of, Jesus is God. That's such a big argument, especially in Islam and with Christians. And I found, like, since I've been starting this, a lot of Christians have been coming at me and I'm like, hold on, I'm talking about Islam. Like, I'm not trying to, like, your faith is your faith, my faith is my faith. Like, why do we have to fight? Like, both religions actually promote peace and like togetherness, and like we all believe in a God. So it must be quite hard to live with people or be around people that are constantly like, no, your faith is wrong, no, your faith is wrong.
yeah, it definitely is. And like, especially like now that my sister's gonna have a baby, she's very like, don't teach my kids anything of that. And so I'm like, it's not my responsibility to teach them. But they are going to ask you, why is auntie covering her head and nobody else in the family is?
Yeah.
So just be ready for those questions too, because you're going to have to answer them.
Yeah, it's a very real subject that you have to talk about. What did you find? Did you feel like there was something lacking in, like, when you were going to church and you're obviously a preacher, and did you find that there was something lacking, or do you think it was mostly to do with your son? How there must have been something there.
Yeah, so I always had a lot of like questions. I had a lot of questions, and any time that I would ask, like before I converted, because my mom was like, maybe you should talk to somebody about it first. And
Mhm.
so I was like, okay. So I told my dad, give me all the numbers that you have of pastors. And he gave me like 7 of them. And so I texted all of them and I asked them a couple of questions, and everybody gave me the same answer. You just have to have faith. I'm like, that doesn't answer my question. Like, I understand that for certain things, yes, you do need to have faith. But basically, you're asking me that for everything in this religion, I need to have faith. There's nothing that's giving me an answer. So then when I started looking into Islam, I realized that all those questions that I had, all of them had an answer. And
Yeah.
to me, it was just like this. I've been like, the Islamic beliefs, that's what I've had my whole life. I had a different title, but those were the beliefs that I had. So converting to me was just like, this is it. Like, I've been living this my whole life, but just under a different title.
Wow. That's great. That's beautiful. Honestly, it's great to. It's mad that you knew inside you that there was just something not right, and that you wanted to find answers, and then you said once you found those answers, you sort of fell into a rabbit hole, and it's amazing to hear. Honestly, I love to hear these stories because I'm like, you must get like a lot must come to you from within somehow, and I wonder how that must feel like to have that, strong faith inside you. It's beautiful to hear, honestly.
Yeah, it's been a journey though, getting here, but I'm very happy with where I am. I feel like such peace now. Where 2 months ago I was honestly like a mess, and not even that, but like these months, the months between April and July, are usually the months that I tend to disappear. I tend to quit my job. I tend to move. Like I actually moved here was last year. I think it was like in April, because April was when my son was born, and then July was when he passed away. So to me, that's just like, I don't know. I tend to be a mess. I tend to like completely shut everybody out. And now that I've converted to Islam, that's been like I haven't felt depressed since I converted to Islam. I don't know, I feel such peace, and it's just been so different.
How have you been finding like doing your salah and reading Quran? Like, have you been reading the English translation?
Yeah, so I'm learning Arabic, or at least I'm trying to, with Duolingo.
Wow, mashallah, mashallah, that's great.
Trying.
Yeah.
But I do read my Quran in English. And then for my prayers, I actually do my prayers in Arabic. But
Mashallah.
I don't have them memorized yet. So what I do is I put them on YouTube, and then I just say it with them. But now I'm at a point where like I know what's coming next. So like the next word, I'm already like ahead of them. But I still don't know like how to say like all by myself, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Mashallah, that's beautiful for 2 months as well. 2 months is not a lot of time. I mean, it's not a lot of time at all.
No.
People think, wow, 2 months, but it's like 8 weeks. That's nothing. So the fact that you've come so far in 2 months, it just shows your dedication, and that you really want this to work. You really want to be a Muslim, and you're serious about this. So that's really good. It's honestly, mashallah.
Yeah.
I work in the parenting niche, and I'm quite interested to hear about, like, you've grown up in the States, I'm in the UK, so Western nations. What was it like growing up in a Western nation, so in the US? I know you spent some time in the Dominican Republic first, but what was it like in the US without Islam? Did you feel like you were prone to like negative influences? Did you feel like there was a lot of, stuff like alphabet community and alcohol and stuff like that coming in?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, growing up in Dominican Republic, we lived like in an Adventist town. Everybody there was Adventist, and if somebody wasn't Adventist, their parents were Adventist. So I didn't even know Islam was a thing. And so coming here, I didn't really know any like Muslims growing up or anything like that. I went to a private school until 8th grade. I went to a Seventh-day Adventist school until 8th grade. So till 8th grade, I wasn't really influenced by anything. But once I got to high school, that's kind of like where everything started. I went to a public school, and so all the kids, I would see them like smoking, drinking, everybody's going to parties, all this stuff. And even though I wasn't very like social in high school, I still had some friends that were like, "You want to try some weed?" I'm like, but later on, also like in college, I moved out at the age of 18. So my parents didn't let me get a job growing up, like after 16, because they knew that once I got a job, I was going to move out. So they figured, well, if she doesn't get a job, she can't move out, and she can't move out if she doesn't have a job. So when I turned 18, like the day that I turned 18, I went and I got a job as a bartender. So I was surrounded by alcohol all the time. And then after my son passed and everything, I was still bartending, and it was way worse. But after, like, now that I would say like a couple of months before I converted to Islam, I wasn't really like a big drinker or anything like that. So I wasn't drinking, but once I did smoke weed though. But once I converted to Islam, like, I don't miss it. Doesn't even call to me, nothing.
Good. It's like, I grew up with all that around me too, but I lived obviously in a Muslim household, but it wasn't like a Muslim household, like strict Muslims. Like, I never saw my mom and dad pray. My gran lived with us, and she was quite a strict Muslim. But I grew up in a school, and there was Muslims drinking as well, but I never really called to me. I was always quite scared. I'm a scaredy cat. Like, I'm more scared of things than to try it. I'm like, no, I don't know what it's gonna do to me. I might end up like dead in a ditch. Like, no. I've never been that type of person to go that way. But I'm like a rare, it's quite rare for that. So I think about now my daughters. I've got 2 daughters, mashallah, and I'm like, oh my God, if they go to a school here, and it's worse. It's worse than when I was at school. Now it's like, and there's not just alcohol and drinking, and not alcohol and smoking, but there's like a whole bunch of other stuff that's just insane. And I'm like, I don't want that for them. I want to ask you this, but it must be hard to answer because your son was really young, but you were a parent, you are a mum, and you're still a mum to a son. So you must have also thought, how do I want my son to grow up? And hopefully, inshallah, I'm hoping you're wanting to have more children, because you will be a magnificent mum one day, inshallah. How do you think about that? Did you think about that?
Oh yeah, of course. So inshallah, I'll have many more kids, however many God wants to give me. But with my son, I actually, before I even had the thought in my head to have a child, I always wanted to homeschool my kids. So when I was growing up, I was actually homeschooled in Dominican Republic. My mom, since she was a teacher, she homeschooled me along with 5 other girls. And I loved being homeschooled. And then I went to a private school. I got bullied a lot in the private school, so I didn't like that. And then when I went to public school, there was all of these bad influences and all of this other stuff. So I was like, definitely not. And then now you see like all these things that like are going on in schools. Like, I was watching this video of this kid that he was like 10 years old, and the school was pushing that they had to read this book that was talking about sex, and it was talking about like same-sex marriage and all this stuff. And it's like, that's fine if you want to teach your kids that, but that's not what I'm teaching my kids, especially not a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So to me, it's always been like, I want to homeschool my kids. And yeah, inshallah.
I am so for that. I'm 100% for that. I do this parenting course for a lot of parents, for Muslim parents, to help them bring up their kids in Western countries. And one of the things that I do say is either homeschool your kids or put them into Islamic schools. I don't know what it's like in the States for Islamic schools, but here in the UK, especially down in like sort of England, there's a lot of Islamic schools down here. And there's all girl schools, there's all boys schools, and I've been and I've seen the schools, and they teach the same things that they do in normal schools, but they teach it within an Islamic way. They've got a prayer room, and they read the Gulma first thing in the morning. They read duas, and they still teach, and they teach all of that stuff that 10-year-old was learning. That's part of the curriculum, is what they call it here. So they have to teach that, but they teach that yes, this is out there, this exists, but it's not what we do. It's not right. Halal, it's haram in our religion. It's not the way to go. And you're 100% right. Like, we don't want our kids going down that road. I don't want my daughter learning about sex at 10 years old. What?
Yeah, like,
I want to be a child.
Yeah, I feel like that also like opens up kind of like an early gate, I guess, to them being interested in that, when like that's not something that you should be thinking about when you're 10 years old. And
No,
I don't know,
definitely.
it's bad here, but
Yeah. Are you wanting to get married? Are you thinking about getting married? You were saying about a future husband and that you can't date, which sounds scary, but it's actually quite good because I think like from what I can imagine, dating must be just so confusing. Like at least you know if you meet someone, listen, I want to get married. Like that is the only goal here.
yeah. So I definitely do want to get married at
Inshallah, one
some
day.
point, yes. But the thing with me is I already chose wrong once. So this time I don't want to be the one to choose. I want God to choose. And when God says this is it, then that's it, you know? But I definitely I don't want to be the one to choose again. I've been ready to be a wife for years now. But when God decides that it's time, he'll let me know.
Yeah, inshallah soon. Inshallah you find that person. How does it work in like your house? Like do your mom and dad have a say? Like obviously in a Muslim house, Pakistani house, it's very much like the parents have a say.
Yeah, so for my house, I'm not sure how it would go down basically because my parents have always wanted me to get married to a Seventh-day Adventist person.
Of course.
So I don't know how accepting they're gonna be, but like since I'm Muslim now, I feel like you have to be accepting to some degree.
Yeah.
But my dad's he's a little rough, you know? So whoever God brings, God knows that they need to be able to deal with my dad.
Yeah. You have a list though. You said you've got 22 questions you said?
No, 22 pages.
Oh, 22 pages. Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
22 pages of questions. There's like over 100 questions in there. Listen, if I am going to get married, I need to know like everything before I do so. Because since I can't like date somebody, I can't have like a relationship with them prior to the marriage. I need to know what I'm going to get myself into because that's going to be like for a lifetime, you know? So I want to be sure.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, when you get married, it's a whole different ballgame. But you also like when you have kids, it's different. Like you find new things out about each other when you have children and but it's a beautiful thing. And I hope you get that. I hope you get your partner and I hope you have your beautiful family, inshallah. Because yeah, you were made to be a wife and a mum. That is what we were made to be. That's what women are built to be, wives and mums. And I know that's like, not the way that everybody thinks these days, but yeah. How did you find that? Like that, did you have a different view of like how men should be and how women should be? And then did that change when you became Muslim?
So actually in my first marriage, or in my previous marriage, I should say, I thought everything was 50-50. But when I got pregnant, I found out I was the one paying for everything. And once I got pregnant, I had a couple of months where I couldn't work. And that's kind of like when I found out. And I was like, oh, no. But for me, it's always been like a 50-50 thing. So like with my parents, that's what I was always taught. So like, for example, let's say my mom covers the rent, but my dad covers all the bills, the food, like everything. So it adds up to kind of being the same. Or like if one person, this is the way that I see it now, because a lot of Muslim men are like, well, I don't think my wife should be working. So the way that I see it is if I obviously want to work from like home. I'm studying to be an IT, so that I'm able to work from home and I'm able to homeschool my kids. But the way that I see it is if my husband is providing for the family, then my responsibility is to build us a nice savings so that when my husband is ready to retire, we have that to rely on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to think. And Islam says you don't need to work. Your husband should be providing for you financially. and your job is to look after your children and build a peaceful home, like you said. And that is just as hard. I think people think, oh my God, what an easy thing. She can just sit at home all day. No, 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 no.
Yeah, no, not
Like,
at all.
because it's not a 9 to 5. It's like a full-time 24-hour
It's
job.
24/7.
Yeah, it's like a full-time thing. And when you add children onto that, like that was my misconception, I think. When I became a mum, I was like, I've got this. I can change nappies. I can sort out a routine. I've got this. Like it's so good. I've babysat kids. I know what to do. And I became a mum and I was like, holy, like, what is this? Like, and you don't even take into account the fact that you've been pregnant and you've got hormone changes and you're everywhere, and then you've got this human being. And then I had my second daughter. My first daughter was 1.5 and she was born, so they were both under 2. So that was like another, like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's almost like having twins. So yeah, but one of the main things was like, how am I going to bring these kids up? Like, how am I going to protect my children? Like, how am I going to bring them up as Muslims? Like, having a faith is just not a cool thing. It's not a cool thing anymore. It's like, what? You believe in God? No, you believe in what's on the news. Believe what's in social media. It's like not a cool thing to be not just a Muslim, but just have any faith.
Yeah, definitely. And so for me, I'm actually, so I'm a nanny now. I work as a nanny. So I'm always like working with kids.
I wish you stayed here. I would so hire you.
I wish I was there too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to move out of the United States.
Oh, come anytime. Listen, I'm here. If you ever want to move, please hit me up. I will 100% help you over here. You said you're quite like, you just get up and go. So if you ever have that thought.
Yeah, one day I might just be like, you know what? I'm done with this and just go somewhere else. Yeah. But since I work as a nanny, like, to me, that's like I basically have the responsibility of a wife and a mom, but without the husband or the kids. But the kids are there, just not mine.
Yeah.
But even like sometimes, so I work for 2 Christian doctors. So a lot of times, like my job, I work like 12-hour shifts. And then sometimes they're like, we need you to work extra. So to me, it's like, it's a full-time job. And it's even that, I feel like it doesn't compare to when you have your own kids.
Yeah.
It's so different. I only had my son for 3 months, but even then I was like, this is not the same as being a nanny or babysitting at all.
No, not at all.
It's a lot harder.
But it's also a beautiful thing. And I'm sure those 3 months, you probably cherish them more than anything. It's beautiful. And I'm assuming you want your kids to be Muslims. You want them to grow up as Muslims.
Of course. Yeah. It was funny. So when I had my son, I used to take so many pictures of my son. And my mom's like, why are you taking so many pictures? And now my mom's like, the fact that you have so many pictures in only like 3 months.
Oh, man.
It was good that, that I did that. But yeah, I definitely want, once I have kids again, I definitely want them to grow up Muslim. And yeah, we'll see how my parents, I don't know. Because my mom's like, yeah, I can watch them. But what do you want me to teach them? I'm like, you don't have to teach them anything. I'm going to teach them.
Yeah. Just be grand. Just be like their grand. And that's all you need.
Just be grandma. That's it. Just love them. That's all I need from you. Just love them.
Did you, I also heard I saw in a video, you said you get quite a lot of hate online after you converted, which is really sad for me to hear. Why? Why do you think that is? And how do you deal with that?
So yeah, when I converted, when I posted that picture on Facebook, everybody was freaking out and I got so much hate. A lot of people that I grew up with, like, actually like blocked me and all this stuff. I'm like, guys, like and I even in the post, I told them like, my beliefs haven't really changed, just my title has, because technically I've always believed in this. I just didn't know there was another name for it.
Yeah.
Instead of what I was calling myself.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just like, I don't know, I guess they were like, you're now Muslim, I can't be friends with you.
Wow.
But to me, that was just like, well, if you can't be friends with me for that, you were never really my friend in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think that the way that I am able to deal with all of that is prayers. I pray so much about it. Before I post any video, before I post anything online, I always pray. And that was actually, I think that's how my first video like blew up. Before I posted it, I prayed. And I told God, if you want this to reach somebody, then let it reach them. If not, then it's fine. Like you know? And that video just like blew up, and I was like, well, that was all God, because I didn't promote that. I didn't like do anything for that. And once I posted that video, everybody just like started messaging me, started calling me, like, what is going on? What's wrong with you? Like, are you okay? Do you need help? I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm better than I've ever been.
Yeah.
But a lot of prayers is what keeps me going through everything really now.
I'm glad. Do you think that it's because of the way that Islam is portrayed in the media, and especially in America, obviously, like there's a lot of history there when it comes to Muslims and stuff. So do you think that's why people kind of freak out when they hear that someone they know is like now a Muslim? They're like, oh my God, like, you know, they've got her. She's like going to become, she's radicalized. And you're like, no. That is not what Islam is.
Yeah, so I got a lot of messages like that, like they're gonna teach you to be terrorists and this and that. I'm like,
yeah,
what? And like my sister actually has like Muslim friends, but they're like more, I would say, like culturized than practice Islam. So a lot of the things my sister tells me, like, you're not going to be able to do this, you're not going to be able to do that, you're not going to be like, as a woman, you can't like talk to other. I'm like, no, that's not what Islam teaches. That's maybe what they taught her, but that's not what Islam teaches. And I always say, culture is not the same as religion. And I think that is like so important to know, and to like kind of keep in mind. But yeah, like, I don't know. It's a lot of people just have that image of like what the media teaches or shows, and that's really not it at all. If you really truly study Islam and what Islam teaches, you'll know that that's not even close to what it is. And even like also with the schools, when I told my sister that I wanted to homeschool or that I would put them in a like Muslim or Islamic school, my sister was like, you have to be careful, because like there's extremists that will teach them in those schools. I'm like, what? Like, no, hold up. First of all, I'm gonna know exactly what's being taught to my child.
Yeah.
So like, no. And
do your research. Like, go and see the schools. Like, yeah, you'll know. You're not gonna just throw your kid in a school and not know what's going on. Of course, but I can understand also on the other hand, like, because people are like pushed this agenda so much and they don't do any research. I mean, you done your research before you became a Muslim. So these people don't have that knowledge. They just have what they see. So of course they're going to be scared. But hopefully, inshallah, now they see it through you, and it's been 2 months, and they will hopefully start to slowly see this amazing change in you and how peaceful you are, and they'll see, oh, wait a second, it's not like that.
Yeah, my mom definitely, she actually called me up the other day, and she's like, I'm really starting to see like the change in you. Because like my dad, since my parents don't know English, for anything and everything, my dad would always call me up. Hey, can you do this for me? Can you call this person? Can you like call this company to like get this truck? Can you do this? So I would always be like, no, I'm busy. No, I'm busy. Like I didn't want to do anything for them or anything like that. And now like my dad calls me. He's like, hey, can you like do this? And if I'm busy, I'll say, call me back in like 30 minutes because I'm going to be done with this in like 30 minutes. And then I'll do it. And so my mom's like, I see the way that you've been like changing, especially with your dad, because my relationship with my dad was very rocky before. And now it actually has gotten a lot better. And so,
Wow.
yeah, my mom's like, I definitely see that there's a lot of changes. And my sister too, I went shopping with her, and she was like, okay, like, because I told her, I was like, I want to buy like some modest clothes, you know, I want to cover up. And she's like, okay. And so we're like measuring shirts, and there's like a shirt that comes up to like here. And I'm like, no, I wanted to cover like all the way. And she's like, who are you? Like, because that was not me at all before. I honestly, in my closet, I don't think I had anything that was like full sleeve, like long sleeve or anything like that. And actually 2 weeks ago, I think, I cleaned out my closet and I basically was left with nothing. And I just like donated all those clothes. But honestly, I was like, I should just light all those on fire because nobody should be wearing that.
Oh God, mashallah, that's beautiful that you have made that big a change, and like you've recognized it and you feel it as well. And mashallah, your parents are. I'm so happy that Islam has brought you so much happiness. Yeah, honestly. Would you give what advice would you give to other sisters, young women that are going through this, are going through what you've been through, thinking about reverting, not quite sure, a bit scared? What advice would you give them?
So I have advice for non-Muslims and for Muslims. So for non-Muslims, I would say read the Quran. Read the Quran because the Quran, that's what we base all our belief on. So read it because what people will tell you is not the same as what the Quran will tell you. And also don't listen to the media because the media has a way of portraying things in a negative way that has nothing to do with what Islam teaches.
Yeah.
And then for Muslims, I would say be patient with new converts or reverts, because this is a whole new lifestyle for us.
Yeah.
And we're still adapting. I remember people like even now, like obviously I still get those messages, but when I first like converted, people were already like, you got to stop doing this. You got to stop doing this. You got to stop doing this. You can't wear this. You can. I'm like, I literally converted 5 days ago. I need to relax because I'm just trying to focus on learning my prayers first
Yeah.
before I do all these
Yeah.
changes. So I would say like, be patient.
Yeah.
Everything will come in time. And especially like if you really want to learn about Islam, if you really practice what Islam teaches, those changes are going to come on its own.
Yes.
If you pray to Allah and you ask that anything that he doesn't want to see in your life for him to remove, he will. You just have to pray and be patient because it's going to come with time.
Yeah, belief and faith. I know what you've said as well, that people always say have faith, but Islam is like, they say if you make a dua, if you pray to Allah, he will answer you. He might not answer you the way you want, but he will answer you. You will get an answer. And if you don't get an answer in this life, you'll get an answer in the next life. So yeah, prayer is everything. And it brings you peace when you pray. You have to pray to something. I don't know what people do when they are in hardship and they're like, well, who do they turn to? Like, who do they go, please help me? Like, whenever I'm going through something, the first thing I do is, Allah, please guide me and help me through this. So yeah, that was great advice, and I hope for people that are listening, Assalamu alaikum to everybody that's listening, and I hope that Sister Rosie has given you some great advice today. So thank you so much for that. I had another question that I actually just came into my head and now it's popped back out. What was I going to ask? There was something I was going to ask you, and it's gone right out of my head. I'm sure it'll come back. Yeah, what are your plans? Like, so what did you said you came to YouTube just to sort of, because your dad sort of like said go to YouTube, but have you got future plans for YouTube, or have you got future plans like business-wise? You said you were a nanny and you're working in IT.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm kind of just letting God like guide my life. I'm open to anything and everything that he wants to happen in my life. I created the YouTube, and it has all that has happened in that YouTube has all been because of God. He's been the one working. I'm simply just pressing that publish button, and that's it. The rest, that's all him. I did create a website where it's kind of like a blog where I'm able to talk more in depth about the things that I don't say on YouTube, just because a lot of times when you make YouTube videos, it can't be that long. You can't grasp the audience like for that long. So I try to keep it as short as possible. So I'm gonna try to put it in this blog that I published. But honestly, what I want to do is I want to be doing like street dawah. But when God wants me to get there, He'll take me there.
Oh, inshallah, that would be amazing. That'd be amazing, and even to see it as well. If you YouTube that and you showed us that, that would be amazing to see.
Yeah.
I find, because I sometimes like when you talk to people in the street, actually, since we were on vacation now as well, and sometimes we'll just randomly start talking to people, like us as a family, you know, and especially Muslims, and you just get so much positivity from just social interaction. People love being around people, and people love kids. So everyone's always like, oh my God, your babies are so beautiful. And then you start talking, and so yeah, that's a great idea. Like, honestly, like if someone sees you face to face and you're like, listen, Islam is great, like why not? Like, you know, people love the human interaction. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Have you been to any Muslim countries? Like, would you think about doing it there?
So again, wherever God wants to take me, I am more than open to just up and leave. I'm very big on just up and leave. So anywhere that He wants to take me, I'm more than open to go there. As of right now, I haven't really been anywhere else. But inshallah, one day.
Yeah, inshallah. And listen, if you want to come here, like I said, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you here.
I'll definitely be taking you up on that.
Yeah, please do. I would love to see you face to face. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really have, and you're such a cool person to talk to. And thank you so much for being on the channel today and for having this chat with me. And I hope we can do it again, inshallah, one day.
Yes.
And everyone, please go and subscribe to Rosy. Her videos are great. I love watching your videos. You're so just like full of life, and I love seeing that. So yeah, go and check Rosy's YouTube out. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on here. This has definitely been wonderful, and inshallah we will definitely be doing this again.
Yes.
So yeah.
Thank you. So thanks everyone for watching, and thanks, Rosy. Inshallah, I'll speak to you again soon.
Yes, definitely.
Bye.